Our Chief National Security Correspondent Jim Sciutto has the story, joins us with the latest. So what are we learning, Jim?
Well, a U.S. official tells me that a decision has been made to suspend some of the military aid to Egypt. It hasn't been announced yet. In fact, the Egyptians haven't been told yet. But this is very significant. $1.5 billion in aid per year to Egypt, about a third of that, $500 million in military aid. Much of that aid has been suspended as the administration has conducted a review. What's new now is that the administration appears to have come to a decision to in fact, go ahead and suspend that aid.
So is that all military aid or some military aid?
Well, the decision is to suspend all the military aid, which is about a third of the $1.5 billion a year in total aid to Egypt. So why now? I mean, the administration a few weeks ago, when we had the violent crackdown on Muslim Brotherhood protesters and the coup that wasn't, remember the administration wouldn't call it a coup, had said at the time they didn't want to make a rash decision about aid, that they were going to put this aid under review. It's been under review. What's new now is that they've made a decision to go ahead and suspend it.
Is it clear at this point what this means for U.S.-Egypt relations? Because, I mean, that money can be made up by Gulf states.
That's exactly the point, and those Gulf states have made that point publicly. In Egypt, in fact, some Egyptian leaders have said that if the U.S. suspends aid, we'll have no problem because the Saudis and others will step up and replace. So this is an extremely risky decision for the U.S. to make. And remember, so many things rely on Egypt. The peace agreement with Israel, for instance. This is a very delicate and important relationship in the region. We know that Egyptian officials are not going to like that. They've been on the record saying that already as this was being considered. So, you know, the ramifications we're going to be finding out over the next several weeks and months.
Yeah, Jim, appreciate the update. Thanks. Let's talk about it now. Joining us on the phone, Ben Wedeman, who's probably spent more time in Cairo than the last pharaoh did, and Robin Wright, Arab Affairs Analyst and Senior Fellow at the Woodrow Wilson Center. Robin, you heard Jim's reporting, a big step by the White House. What's your reaction?
This has been coming for quite a while, actually, and President Obama signaled that the United States was slowing down aid to Egypt in his address at the United Nations just a couple of weeks ago. The United States has been increasingly disillusioned with the way the military leadership has cracked down on its own people. Over 1,000 died in the early weeks after the military coup, and then over the past week, you've seen dozens more killed in confrontations. And the Egyptian government has proven to be unwilling really to discuss with the United States. It's been rather belligerent itself in talking about the troubled relationship and the fact that Egypt will make its own decisions and not really listen to what the United States is telling it or asking of it.
Ben, what kind of impact do you think this can have?
Well, immediately, probably the Egyptian government is going to find it's going to gain somewhat in terms of local public opinion. I mean, Egyptians I've already been in touch with about this decision or announcement or from the United States that it's going to cut aid seem to react positively. There seems to be a lot of frustration with the United States given its role in Egypt over the last 2.5 years since the revolution. But obviously it's going to get very complicated because, of course, one of the underpinnings of U.S. aid to Egypt was the Camp David Accords. And this really does throw into question whether Egypt will continue to comply with these peace agreement between Egypt and Israel that goes back to the late 1970s. So this is quite a serious development.
Robin, do you agree with that this could impact those peace agreements?
Well, that's the real danger. We forget that Egypt is not only the political trendsetter in the Arab world, but that it is cornerstone of the Arab-Israeli peace process. And the U.S. aid really was started in the aftermath of the Camp David Accords in the late 1970s. And the U.S. investment has been not only to buy political influence on the Egyptian government, but also to ensure that it complied with the peace treaty, which without Egypt involved with Israel, it's hard to believe that the other Arabs would be willing to engage with Israel and think about the peace process. The Palestinians at the moment and Lebanon or Syria someday down the road.
So, Ben, I mean, is America less liked than they were? I mean, even in the worst of times?
Dramatically so. I don't think in the entire time I've been covering Egypt over the last 20 years, I've seen relations so bad as they are now. And there's sort of a general impression among many Egyptians that the United States was backing the Muslim Brotherhood and President Mohammed Morsi until he was deposed on the 3rd of July. It's also important to keep in mind that the Gulf states, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates have pumped billions of dollars into Egypt since the overthrow of Morsi, well over $12 billion, which dwarfs what the United States was giving Egypt, and therefore, for the Egyptian government, a cutoff in U.S. aid is symbolically significant, but in terms of the actual amount of money they're getting, it will not make a big difference. Gulf states, as I said, are actually giving Egypt quite a lot of money at the moment.
Yeah, making up the gap. Ben Wedeman, I appreciate your reporting. Robin Wright, thanks for being with us. More on the story, go to CNN.com. Up next, we said it was a busy night, and we meant it. We got more.